Hey you guys, welcome back to Flickers of Fear. So, during one of our infamously drunken but very fun Friday night Sidetracks live streams, one of you guys in the chat recommended a new horror movie to me that had recently dropped on Shudder. And this movie is a 2024 film, and it's Irish, and it's kind of, I guess I'd call it like a supernatural murder mystery, kind of, and it's called Oddity. Now, there was a lot of buzz about this movie when it debuted at South by Southwest back in March of 2024, and it actually even won the Audience Award in the Midnighter category, and has gotten pretty much universally positive reviews since then. I think I even saw like a headline with Mike Flanagan, of all people, saying that he thought it was like the scariest movie of the year. So this movie is actually the second film by writer-director Damian McCarthy. Now, he made his debut back in 2020 with a movie called Caveat, and I kept seeing that, like, scrolling, and I think that one's on Shudder, too, but I haven't watched it, like, even though the cover looked really cool, and I'm like, oh, I should probably get around to watching that one of these days, but now that I've seen this one, I absolutely want to go back and watch Caveat, because I've heard that was really creepy, too, because this second movie, Oddity, is, like, really fucking great, so I definitely want to go back and see his first one. But yeah, seriously, if you're into kind of creepy, old-fashioned ghost story kind of vibe, which I totally am, but that also has, like I said, a little bit of a murder mystery aspect and also like a little bit of a morality or like a revenge type story, then this should probably be like high up on your to watch list. It's pretty terrific, and it has like some genuinely scary moments in it, and just the whole thing just has this real pervasive sense of dread like all the way through it, which I was really into. Now, as I usually mention in my movie discussions, I strongly suggest that you go into Oddity with as little foreknowledge of what's going to happen as possible, but that said, I will be talking about the plot in a fair amount of detail, though I won't be spoiling the ending or any big twists or anything like that. So obviously, if you'd rather know nothing about the movie, please go watch it first and then come back here afterwards, so this is like your last spoiler warning. Now, I have to say the first 10 minutes of this movie like sucked me right in, I think are a masterclass really in like tension building. So we're following a woman named Dani, and she's in the midst of renovating this really old stone house, like way out in the Irish countryside, I'm presuming. So this place doesn't have any electricity, there's no heat, there's no running water, and it only has cell signal in like one very, very specific spot, like on that. She's very excited when she finds it, like it's on the stair landing or something. But Dani doesn't seem to mind all of these inconveniences, and she's actually been camping out in this big empty living room of this house in like a yellow pup tent while she's working on fixing the place up. Now, at some stage early on in the festivities, she calls her husband, whose name is Dr. Ted Timms, and he's a psychiatrist at a hospital for the criminally insane. Now, he's been working night shifts and staying back at their place in the city. I'm presuming that they just bought this country house and are eventually going to move into it when it's renovated. But she's been sleeping out at the country house like while she's working on it. So like I said, she doesn't really seem particularly bothered by staying at this old, very isolated place by herself all night. And as a matter of fact, she seems kind of into it in a lot of ways. Like she's set up her camera to take photos every couple of minutes, like hoping that she'll catch an image of a ghost. So far, in that regard, she's been disappointed, however. One night, though, there is an unexpected knock on the front door of the house. Now, the door has, it's a real big, thick wooden door, but it has like this little metal sliding hatch kind of thing where you can look out and see who's out there. So she very apprehensively like slides this little hatch open. And it turns out that the person knocking is this intensely twitchy, sketchy looking dude with kind of long hair and one weird looking white glass eye. Like he has one normal eye and then one white glass eye. So he asked Dani to let him in. But as any sane woman would, she's like, no fucking way, Jack. Like, and she's like, what the hell is this dude even doing, like, all the way out here? Like, how did he even get here? But then, this man tells her that while she was outside just now, getting something out of her car, like in the courtyard, somebody went into her house while her back was turned. Now, she obviously doesn't believe this at first, but then she thinks she hears, like, a creak somewhere off in the darkened recesses of the house someplace. So could this guy actually be telling the truth, or is this a trick? Like, does he just want to get inside? Or is it two guys working together? Like, we don't know. And we don't find out just yet. Because after the title drop, there's that great opening sequence, and then the title comes up. And then the movie jumps ahead 1 year. So Dr. Ted, the husband, is walking into this little curio shop. And he's greeted by this kind of spooky-looking woman who is the spitting image of his wife, except she has kind of this bobbed, like, ice white hair, whereas Danny had, like, longer brown hair. So this woman is Darcy. She's played by the same actress that plays Danny, whose name is Carolyn Bracken. This is Danny's twin sister. Now, Darcy is blind, and she owns this antique shop, which is supposedly full of cursed items. Now, from the discussion that Darcy has with Dr. Ted, it becomes clear that Danny was indeed brutally murdered a year ago, on the night the weird dude showed up at her front door. Now, Dr. Ted tells Darcy that the weird guy who was at the house, whose name was Olin Boole, has died at the hospital where Ted works. Olin had actually been a patient of Dr. Ted's who had been released only a week before Danny's murder. So the reason why Dr. Ted is at this store is that he has brought Darcy the dude's glass eye because she told him that she wanted it. Here's the thing, though. Ted tells Darcy that Olin died of a heart attack. But we, as the viewer, know this is not true because there was a brief scene prior to this where we see Olin in his room at the hospital and he gets attacked by some thing that we don't see. And that thing absolutely obliterates his head. I mean, there's just like his body is there and then there's just little gobbets of flesh, like where his head used to be on the floor. So now you're kind of wondering, I wonder what the fuck is going on here. So Darcy suggests that she and Ted get together at some point to talk about Danny. She's like, you know, I'm ready. I'm over my grief now and we need to talk this out. And Ted kind of half-heartedly, yeah, we should totally do that, whatever. He's clearly not really into the idea. Then he says, yeah, maybe you can come out and visit us out at the old stone house, you know what I mean? And Darcy is all, who is this us, motherfucker? I don't know who you're talking about. And he very sheepishly then tells her that he's already got a new girlfriend, whose name is Hanna. And she was like a pharmaceutical rep that he met at work, and they had been friends, supposedly, before the wife died, was murdered. But it was this woman's friendship that got him through the grief, and like then they just ended up hooking up or whatever. So Darcy is clearly a little hurt that Ted has moved on from her sister, like so quickly after the murder. But she doesn't really make too big of a thing about it. Now, a week later, Ted and Hanna are at the old house, which has now been completely renovated. It's actually like a really cool house. The layout of it is really interesting. I never really saw one that was laid out like that before. Both of these two, kind of shitheels, to be honest. They're both kind of unpleasant. They seem like they're just constantly sniping at one another. They don't seem to like each other very much, which I thought was kind of interesting. One of the main beefs, it seems, is that Hanna really does not like having to stay at this old house by herself at night while Ted is still working the graveyard shift, because she thinks it's creepy, and she's like, oh, and hello, your wife was also brutally murdered out here, like, only a year ago. Like, what if there are more of your crazy patients running around out in the darkness, you know what I mean? And I don't have anybody here to defend me. So Ted, who clearly doesn't really give much of a shit about anything, really, tells her, well, why don't you just stay at our place in the city if it bothers you so much, like, quit bitching about it. He's like, look, after there's another doctor and he's going to retire soon, and then I'll get back on the day shift, and we can live out here in the house, like, on a normal schedule. So this seems to mollify her somewhat. She also tells him that she found Danny's camera. And, you know, the one that she was at the beginning of the movie where she had it set up to take ghost pictures or whatever. And so she asks him, well, do you want to keep it? Because there's like a whole bunch of pictures of you and her like together, like from back before she got murdered, you know what I mean? Obviously. He's kind of ambivalent about it. Like I said, he doesn't really seem to give much of a crap about anything. He's just like, yeah, we should probably keep that, whatever. Now, Hanna also tells him that she had actually been farting around with it and taking some pictures with it. And she's like, oh, a picture I took this morning or yesterday or whatever. In one of them, there's a little blurred face that looks like Danny, like peeking around this little distant corner, like in the house. So she's like, what, you don't see her? And he's like, I don't see what I'm looking at. And then he's like, okay, just no. He starts calling her crazy. He's like, look, I get enough of that ghostly bullshit from Darcy. I don't need it from you too. Oh, and Hanna also tells Ted, oh, Darcy sent us this big trunk. and that it was recently delivered. She doesn't know what's in it because there's a big padlock on it. It's just kind of sitting there next to the dining room table. Now, minutes after this conversation, Darcy herself shows up unannounced at the house. Now, this was actually great because it's never explained, like, how she got there. Like, she obviously didn't drive herself because she's blind, like, unless she can use the Force or something. But we don't see, like, if she took a cab or an Uber or nothing like that. Like, we don't see her hear anything. She's just suddenly there in the courtyard, and Yana's like, hey, your sister-in-law is, like, out in the yard. How did that happen? So Ted and Yana are understandably perplexed as to why she's here. But Darcy says, well, Ted invited me. Which he kind of did, but they hadn't really made any concrete plans, like, when it was going to be. Because he was like, oh, yeah, in a week or two, like, you should come out or whatever. Like, he just kind of said it vaguely like that. But he's like, look, now is not a good time. I'm just heading out to work, and Yana is going to leave too. Like, she's got plans with her friends, like, in the city or whatever, so she's not going to be here. But Darcy is all pretty insistent that she's like, well, I'm here now, and I'd like to stay if it's all the same to you. So even though Yana is giving Ted the stink eye the entire time, like, no, you know what I mean? Ted's like, okay, fine, like, you can stay here by yourself if you really want to. Darcy also opens the trunk for them, like, because remember, it had a padlock on it. And she reveals a very unsettling, life-size wooden man whose mouth is kind of carved into this perpetual scream, I guess. She says that a witch gave it to her mother, and now she is bequeathing it to Ted and Yana, who very obviously do not want the fucking thing. So Ted leaves to go to work. And just as Yana is preparing to also leave, after Darcy actually, I love this, like, she very cheekily is like, hey, why don't you make me some food before you go? You know what I mean? Yana's like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care how blind you are. She's like, look, fridge is in there to the right. You figure it out. But then Yana discovers that she can't find her goddamn car keys anywhere. Like, she tears the house apart looking for them, but they seem to have vanished into thin air. So now she's kind of stuck at the house with Darcy all night, a development which she is clearly not very happy about. The women have some wine and start talking, though. And Darcy reveals that she is essentially psychic. Her specialty is actually psychometry, where you can, hold an object in your hands and, like, you can tell about the person that owns the object, right? Now, so she's saying all this very seriously. Yana thinks she's a nutcase. Darcy actually shows her the glass eye that it belonged to Olin Bull, her sister's convicted killer. Darcy had wanted it because she wanted to hold it and wanted to know what exactly had happened to her sister like a year ago. Now, after Darcy falls asleep, Yana gets curious about this wooden man that was in the trunk. Now, he's no longer in the trunk, he's now sitting upright at the table. And she notices that he has, like, 5 holes, like, drilled into the back of his head. It almost looks like a bowling ball, kind of. And from out of these holes, she pulls out all kind of weird little objects. Like, there's rolled up photos of Danny and Darcy in there. There's, like, a lock of what looks like Darcy's hair. And also a vial of blood. So, that's a little strange. Now, Darcy catches her doing this and, like, yells at her, which she's not. She's very, very, like, restrained and very quiet. But she, like, shouts, like, emphatically at her, put that shit right back where it came from immediately. Now, from this point, things get kind of creepier and creepier as new revelations kind of come to light. And so, like, supernatural events start to become more prominent past this point. So, like, for example, like, Yana not only thinks she sees Danny's ghost at one point, like, pretty clearly like an apparition, but she also starts to suspect that the wooden man is, like, changing positions when she's not looking. Now, I will say that the solution to the mystery, because it's like a murder mystery, isn't terribly hard to figure out if you're following along with the story. I didn't really mind that at all. I mean, the atmosphere of this thing was, like, so thick with, like, dread and actual genuine suspense. There were actually, like, a few jump scares, but they were really well-earned ones, you know what I mean? It wasn't just kind of a thing where they were just popping shit in your face just to unsettle you or whatever. They really built up to them, like, in a really good way. I think most of the creep factor of the movie comes more from, like, the build-up of tension of the scenes, like characters, like, peering back over their shoulders, like, into this darkened doorways and things like that, like, wondering if something's back there, you, like, expecting something bad to happen, you know what I mean? Like, the way that it's shot is, like, really creepy like that. Like, the whole vibe of it is really unsettling, and I really dug it a lot. I got super invested in this whole unfolding mystery and the whole, like, oppressive mood of the thing. So yeah, I mean, if you like fairly low-key, like, ghost story narratives, crossbred a little bit with like an EC Comics, like a mild EC Comics, like revenge kind of sensibility, then definitely check this one out. It's pretty disquieting. It's beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and it's paced really well. It's not long. It's only 98 minutes, and it's, you know, keeps up a good like clip all through that. Like I said, it's not like action packed or anything like that, but there's always like something creepy going on. It's pretty easy to see why this, you know, earned so many accolades since it got released. It's not doing anything super revolutionary or anything like that, but it's taking a classic style of a horror story, like a haunted ghost story with a, you know, with a murder mystery type of aspect to it, and just doing a really original, like, well executed slant on that, which is really, I mean, you can't ask for any more than that, can you? That will do it for this Flickers of Fear. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please remember, like, share, comment, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. And I will see you guys again on the next one. Bye.